The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Chairman, firstly I'd like to pay a compliment to several previous speakers, not the one who's just immediately resumed his speech so much as Mr O'Connor and the Honourable Phil Goff. The Honourable Damien O'Connor, both I thought gave absolutely outstanding contributions which really nailed two key points. Mr Goff said, and I think it's a hugely important point, that there is a huge irony in this bill, quite rightly, conferring the power on the Crown to issue whole-of-government directions, but at the same time removing Mighty River power from the SOE Act by its partial privatisation and thus removing a core ability of the Crown to issue directions across the energy sector. And if that partial privatisation program continues, that will be a terribly risky thing for our energy sector and flies completely contrary to the intent of this bill, which we strongly support. However, the Honourable Damien O'Connor has raised a very important point, which I would like to turn the House's attention further to, which is in relation to the Statement of Intent provisions which are vested in clauses 179, 178, 179 and so forth on pages 151 to 155 of the bill. And this was a matter of some debate at the Select Committee, and it was indeed a matter that we sought additional advice for and have made amendments on. And if I can introduce listeners to the issue by telling a very brief war story from a time when I was one of the Economic Development Minister's team. There was a habit for draft statements of intent to arrive in ministers' offices the day before the deadline for signature. Now, it may be that civil servants were watching Yes Minister, the TV series, which the public thinks is a comedy, members of Parliament think is a documentary, and the public service thinks is a training video. Yes Minister behaviour is not unknown, and the statement of intent is absolutely crucial, but, oh Minister, this is just a routine piece of correspondence, sign here, has too often been heard in the beehive. Now, I can tell you that when it was my turn, having watched Yes Minister, I rang the Chief Executive of the department and I said, why don't you pop over for a cup of tea and a chat? This was about 6 weeks before the deadline, because I would like to co-draft the Statement of Intent with you in person. This caused a long silence on the other end of the phone, and when the Chief Executive was departing my office after the first 3-hour session, he was heard to mutter to one of his colleagues, fortunately in the hearing of one of my staff, we've got a real problem with this one. So we invited him back. We invited him. He wouldn't be the only one to have reached that conclusion. But I intend to continue to be a problem for as long as I have the privilege of being in this house. My colleague says, what took him 3 hours to work that out? So we had a couple of more sessions, and I see the Minister in the chair is smiling benignly, because I think all politicians of whatever stripe, we've shared some of these experiences, because there is always a little bit of a polite and constitutional arm wrestle in Wellington between the political layer and the professional civil service. And we are very well served, and the Select Committee, again, I'd like to record, has been excellently served by our highly skilled civil servants and advisors on this bill. So there's no complaints there. But it's not just National versus Labour, left versus right, thoughtful versus shallow, or whatever you'd like to... Oh, sorry that you reacted to that one, Mr Bennett. It wasn't intended at you. But the other aspect of this is always the political layer versus the civil service layer. And it's in that context that these provisions of this bill are actually really, really important. What the civil service has recommended is really no need to have a compulsory, formal, contractual statement of intent updated every year. Unfortunately, John Hayes, who's never been a minister, swallowed that line and thought it was just reducing paperwork. But actually there is a real risk, as the Honourable Damien O'Connor has pointed out. He has been a minister, and he understands that unless there are required contractual processes to nail people's feet to the ground with hard-wired key performance indicators, things can slip. And that's why the Statement of Intent provisions were so hotly debated at the Select Committee. We reached a compromise which was that ministers, Mr. Chairman,
The Honourable David
ministers will have the ability to require a new statement or an updated statement of intent, a renewed contract at any time, at least annually, or more frequently should they require it, and that there be an obligation on the part of their civil service advisors to advise ministers of that right. So while flexibility is being introduced here, the obligations on the system to have clear and binding performance agreements has not been gainsaid. Now, Mr. Chairman, the incoming Labor government will, in a year or so's time, be watching this extremely carefully, because if it is our experience that these clauses have weakened the contracting process with the professional civil service, they will be reviewed. But for now, we are happy to give this compromise a good chance to work. We believe it's been entered into across the House in good faith, and we think that there is the potential for it to be streamlined and effective. But, Mr. Chairman, we are not blind to the possibility of slippage, as the Honourable Damien O'Connor, from experience, has pointed out to the House. I think it is helpful, sir, in Clause 141 on page 153 that the content of the Statement of Intent is well set out. And if I can direct the House's attention, members' attention to that, in subclause 1 of Clause 141, a big emphasis on strategic objectives. What we're trying to do here through this law is to lift the gaze of the system from the wood, from the trees to the wood, from the minute to the fundamental, from the operational to the strategic. And so we're writing here quite clear language which says that ministers and their advisers must be focused on the strategic goals. The rest of the design of this bill supports that, with its interagency cooperation, its multi-category appropriations, its enhanced reporting requirements, its full traceability of appropriations. All of those things come together here to try to hit a sweet spot. And it's a sweet spot which combines flexibility and acuity. That's our shared goal. Shared between National and Labor, shared between politicians and officials. That's where we're trying to aim. A modern, streamlined, flexible, delegatable, interactive, community-integrated civil service that achieves more with not much more money, that achieves better outcomes for the public, and yet is parsimonious, there's a good word for a morning session, with the taxpayers' dollars. And in the so doing, if we can cut some red tape, that would be nice too. If we can cut some red tape, that would be nice too. And we look forward to the minister, an experienced minister. I note that as this debate's hotted up, the government's put a more experienced minister in the chair, and we look forward to her sharing her experience with the House on the intent of this bill and how she believes it's going to work. I'm sure members on this side would love the minister to take a quick call and respond to the points that the Honourable Damien O'Connor has made. And if she's feeling really brave, she could respond to the points that the Honourable Phil Goff has made.
You can't say that.
I can't say the Honourable Phil Goff?
No, the word you said before. So.
Brave?
Yes. Yeah, that's a reflection on the member.
Oh, I was emphasising her courage, no. But I take your guidance, sir. Never. Never. Would the members opposite like to add any other adjectives to their morning potpourri? We love you too, Mr. Longy. Yes. Well, Mr. Chairman, Clause 141 sets out the strategic objectives of the Statement of Intent. The House has debated at some length its provisions. Section 184 indicates the process that must be followed. Sir, what's really interesting about Clause 184 is its degree of prescription. For example, in Clause 2, Subclause A, Subclause 1, it says that the Crown entity must provide a draft statement of intent to its responsible minister not later than 2 months before the start of the first financial year to which the statement of intent relates. and it even provides sub-sub clauses for the cases of newly established Crown entities. That is how careful we are all trying to be to ensure that no delegated instrument of the Crown can escape the chain of accountability, either for good outcomes or for the wise use of public money. And the reason that this is so prescriptive about Crown entities, Mr Chairman, is because of the delegated nature.
Maggie Barry.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. When we look at Part 3 of the State Sector and Public